Someone woke up angry and confused. He didn't understand why his vision had suddenly turned black. He pushed back his bangs and saw that his hand looked different. He also had a mushroom cap that he couldn't remove. He was completely stunned until he saw his reflection in a puddle. He was a mushroom, and he couldn't understand what the hell was going on. He tried to remember the last thing he did. He'd been looking at a very beautiful woman. Basically, he pleasured himself to death and was reincarnated as a mushroom monster. I guess this is better than getting hit by a truck, damn, right? He complained about how he was supposed to pick up girls looking like this. He demanded his handsome face back. Suddenly, someone called out to him, "Brother Shinbao!" Our protagonist slowly turned around, then froze in shock. He thought he'd seen a beautiful woman. He got excited, thinking there were pretty girls even inside a mushroom dungeon. He rubbed his eyes and looked more carefully. Now he saw it clearly. It was just a drab, withered mushroom. This mushroom asked why he was saying so many weird things today. Shinbao realized he was just horny. He asked what that meant and what he usually said. The mushroom informed him of his usual lines. "Intruders! Kill them!" And a scream. Shinbao couldn't believe it. Suddenly, someone yelled that there were intruders. The monsters had arrived, and these guys were what we call orc. There were two orcs, Labu, a level 1 orc archer, and a level 1 orc warrior named Kabu. Labu was worried since they didn't have a healer with them. Kabu assured her it was fine, as the monsters there were the lowest level. Plus, the dungeon monsters were really dumb. Their dialogue and movements were all fixed patterns. A small level 1 mushroom attacked them, but was easily taken down, proving Kabu's point. Labu realized they could speedrun the dungeon again. More little mushrooms charged recklessly. Kabu cut them to pieces. Shinbao watched them and wondered why the mushroom men charged head-on like that. He asked if they didn't know how to run, if they couldn't win. His mushroom friend explained that mushroom men were non-playable characters, so they just followed their programming, unlike players who were free. He asked if those two orcs were players. He thought players were usually human. The mushroom replied that he was just an NPC with some extra lines of exposition, so that was all he knew. Their conversation was interrupted when something almost hit them. It was an arrow. The orc archer suddenly aimed at them. Our guy immediately started running, but his friend just stood there. He yelled at him to run, but then noticed he wasn't moving at all. He was completely paralyzed. Shinbao ran back, grabbed him, and told him to run, but the mushroom calmly replied that fleeing wasn't part of the mushroom men's programming. Shinbao extended his hand and told him to take it. He grabbed the mushroom's hand, and instantly a data anomaly warning activated. The system kept warning him non-stop, but he didn't care about the programming or the anomaly. For the first time, the mushroom felt something. He was moved by Shinbao's actions. Meanwhile, Shinbao was focused on only one thing: survival. This left the orc confused. Mushroom men weren't supposed to flee. Kabu frowned and thought it was a bug, so she decided she'd submit a report to the administrator when they logged off. Bug or not, Labu wasn't going to let them escape, so Kabu decided to disconnect first to send the form. She casually warned Labu not to die, but then she laughed. There was no way Labu would die in a place like this. Shinbao quickly searched for something he could use as a weapon, but his friend told him there was nothing. Mushroom men were programmed to be completely unarmed. Then Shinbao noticed something: a treasure chest. If they were lucky, there might be a weapon inside. But the other mushroom immediately dismissed it. Those chests, he explained, were designed exclusively for players. NPCs couldn't open them. He tried to reason more about it, but Shinbao tried anyway. More data anomaly warnings exploded in his head, but this time, it worked. He opened the chest. The mushroom beside him looked on in disbelief. The old Shinbao never would have done something like that. He couldn't understand how he'd changed so much. Shinbao exclaimed that there were a lot of good things inside. Suddenly, an arrow shot directly at them. The mushroom had no idea why he moved like that. Mushroom men weren't programmed to protect their companion, but he still intervened. He stepped in front of Shinbao and blocked the arrow. He wasn't going to let anyone hurt him. Shinbao froze as blood splattered. The arrow pierced his mushroom friend's chest, and before he could react, a second arrow was already flying toward them. His friend collapsed to the ground, and something inside Shinbao broke. He swatted away the incoming arrow. From the cliff above, Labu watched everything. She was stunned. A lowest-level mushroom monster had deflected her arrow and even opened a treasure chest meant only for players. In that moment, she realized this wasn't just a bug, it was a serious one. Elsewhere, outside the dungeon, Kabu reported the bugs they had found. This time, a robed man replied that he understood. Kabu wondered how long the dungeons had been running and why there were still bugs. The hooded figure explained that it was precisely because the dungeons had been running for so long that oversights during maintenance were inevitable. He added that no, it was surprising that several small errors had appeared. He explained that after defeating the human coalition, demolition, the Great Lich feared the heroes would cause problems with nothing to do, so he designed the dungeon system for their entertainment. Since then, heroes had entered the dungeon as players to hunt monsters, gather resources, and level up, all to kill their boring time. If players found an error, they would send it to the necromancers, the administrators, and wait for it to be fixed. Returning to this particular error, Labu decided she would fix it herself. She didn't want to wait for the administrators. She fired an arrow, and Shingu anticipated it, cutting it down with his knife. He was surprised by his own agile movements and realized that the Mushroom Man's base body stats were actually quite good. More arrows shot towards him, but he parried them all. He realized, however, that it wasn't easy to close the distance under continuous fire with the Mushroom Man's short leg. He wondered if there was anything he could use to block the arrow. Then he noticed the empty treasure chest and cut it open. As the next arrow approached, he used the lid as a shield. Labu wondered how a Mushroom Man could know how to use a chest lid like that. She noticed his actions and behavior were strange. She kept raining arrows on him, but the treasure chest lid blocked them all. To her, he moved like a player. She was caught off guard when he suddenly leaped towards her and split her in half. As he descended, her bow shattered in the process. She fell into a pool of her own blood. Suddenly, a notification appeared, congratulating him on achieving first blood. With that, he unlocked a Mushroom Man racial talent called mycelial network. Through it, he could connect with subordinates, transmit information and spores, and even share his skills and experience. Once the shared experience was complete, he could level up. He also unlocked another racial talent called fungus plant. With it, he could plant himself or his companions into enemy corpses or nutrient-rich areas to absorb nutrients and restore HP. After complete absorption, he could even acquire the enemy's class and abilities. Additionally, he obtained fungus shapeshift, which allowed him to switch between his Mushroom Man body and a remodeled form. He hadn't expected to get a system, but then again, after reincarnating as a Mushroom Man, getting a system didn't seem all that surprising. He activated the fungus plant ability, stepped onto the orc torso, and began absorbing it. It felt great until he suddenly remembered something. He looked towards the cliff. Remembering how his improvised shield had blocked an arrow, he decided it was time to save her. He activated fungus plant again. The area was enveloped in an intense glow. Small sprouts began to grow from the corpse. Then a leg slowly started to form. The shape of a human body took form, and finally, it became a woman. When she was complete, she suffered a wound. Shinbao was so stunned that his nose bled. He had just created a beautiful woman. A status window appeared. She was a level 2 mushroom archer, guard rank, archer class, with agility as her main stat and the mushroom mycelium racial talent. This allowed her to extend mycelium after taking damage, absorb nutrients from enemy corpses, and heal herself during this process. She could also absorb enemy racial talents and abilities. She had already absorbed the Orc Berserker racial talent, which increased damage by 30% for 20 seconds with a 5-minute cooldown. Furthermore, she specialized in ranged combat and obtained the Parasitic Spore Shot ability, which allowed her to fire spores at enemies, drain their nutrients without them noticing, and restore her own health. This woman was now his subordinate. She addressed him as boss and asked to be given a name. A notification appeared, informing him that he had cultivated his first mushroom subordinate and needed to name her. He wondered if mushroom men usually didn't have names. Then he paused and thought carefully about what to name her. Finally, he gave her the name Sai Fen. She acknowledged his order and declared that from now on, her name was Sai Fen. Sai Fen then asked what instance realm they would clear next. He was confused and reminded her that they were monsters, non-player characters. So he declared that his top priority right now was to kill the remaining player. Later, only Labu's bones remained. Another orc stepped on them. Kabu was astonished that Labu had been killed by the most despicable type of monster. He reasoned that a normal level 1 mushroom man could never do something like that. Then he understood. This monster was a rare elite. Now for him, this trip had definitely been worth it. Rare elites always drop great loot. Luck was on his side, and if he got blue gear, it could be a fortune. He activated Orc Charge and charged at Shin Bao, but his attack was blocked. He even suffered a scratch on his thigh. Shin Bao realized that this warrior was much tougher than the archer. A single cut had only caused minor damage. The enraged orc cursed the mushroom man. He admitted he was surprised that he had actually managed to injure him. Unexpectedly, Shin Bao turned and began to run, then closed the door behind him. On the other side was a bridge. Of course, Kabu pursued him, smashing through the wooden door in the process. But then he stopped. The mushroom man was just standing there, unmoving, not running. Kabu frowned. Why was he just standing there like that? A sense of unease washed over him. It looked like a trap, but he reassured himself. Whatever it was, he was still just an NPC. Without warning, the mushroom man unpredictably flipped him the bird. Naturally, Kabu was furious at being mocked. He roared that he would pound the mushroom man to a pulp. He stepped onto the wooden bridge, but his weight made it wobble. He raised his weapon, preparing to strike Shimbao, but then his foot broke through the plank. The bridge began to give way, and the entire structure collapsed beneath him. He fell directly into the water, cursing the despicable mushroom monster and accusing him of setting a trap. Shingu pointed out that the orc had even dropped his weapon in a panic. He added that Kabu's movements were now restricted in the water. Then Shingu threw a knife, but it only lodged itself in Kabu's shoulder. Kabu scoffed. Even disarmed and slowed, a weakling like that couldn't do him much harm. But then, out of nowhere, an arrow suddenly pierced the side of his neck. Just seconds before, the orc had been above the water, mocking the weakling, completely unaware that an arrow was headed straight for him. The arrow struck, tearing through the side of his neck, splashing water and blood as he fell. He turned, demanding to know who had launched the sneak attack, but before he could react, another arrow hit him in the head, and he sank into the water. Saifeng's orc berserker effect faded, and the orc warrior was eliminated. They dragged the corpse to the shore for Xingwao to do his thing. He activated his ability and absorbed it, gaining the power to reshape his appearance. Smoke filled the air. When it dissipated, he was back in human form. Yang Jun looked down in surprise, seeing something swinging between his legs. He panicked, but then realized it was just the axe handle. For a second, he thought he'd forgotten to get dressed and was completely exposed. A status window appeared. He was now Mushroom Boss, Yang Jun, Boss rank, Blue Warrior class, with strength as his primary stat and level 2. His Mushroom Mycelium talent allowed him to extend mycelium while injured, absorb nutrients from corpses and other substances to heal, and during that process, absorb enemy abilities and racial talent. He retained the Orc Berserker talent, increasing damage by 30% for 20 seconds, making him much stronger in close combat. Another notification appeared. The mushroom plant had updated. He could now separate spores from his body, plant them in corpses or nutrient-rich areas, and cultivate soulless mushroom minions. Their experience would be shared with him, and these minions could even be transplanted to other minions. Current limit 2. He also obtained loot. 2 small magic bag, handheld pouches that could compress and store a limited number of objects like weapons. He asked how they were going to get out of there. She explained that this was the last floor of the mushroom dungeon, and the only way out was to fight their way up, floor by floor. Then he questioned why level 1 orc players could enter directly. She explained that players had special privileges and could choose to start from the lowest level dungeon. He felt curious about how she knew all of that. She responded that she'd heard it in player chat when she was still just a regular player character. With that, he made a decision. They would fight their way out, one floor at a time. They advanced until they reached a fork in the road. He asked what was down each path. She explained that the left led to the level 1 slime floor, while the right led to the graveyard. He told her to go to the slime floor and start leveling up. As for him, he would go check out the graveyard. When she asked what was so special about it, he just smiled. It might be a graveyard now, he mused, but in the future, it would become his territory. On the way, he picked up some ragged clothes and put them on. As he approached, the stench hit him. Even from a distance, the pestilence was overwhelming. This place was where everything was dumped. Garbage, corpses, and who knew what else. He finally arrived. Even though the remains had been there for a long time, he could still feel residual nutrients. He saw materials mixed into the dirt, potion residues, tar, even a broken magic book. With a free spot and enough nutrients, he decided to plant another mushroom minion, so he absorbed everything. A strong wind blew through the area. Then something emerged, a fire-headed mushroom, a level 2 pyro shroom. Fire was its primary stat. It had the pyroblast ability, launching explosive fire attack that engulfed enemies and drained their nutrients, and blazing dash, increasing its movement speed by 50%. It looked intimidating, even though it was a bit small. Then he noticed something. Lights. His eyes widened. A lightning bolt suddenly shot at him. He reacted instantly and jumped. Once he landed safely, he turned and sought the source. He was attacked by a level 2 graveyard dominator, a lightning snail. He realized it was a humus-feeding monster, making it a competitor, occupying the same ecological niche as the mushroom men. He decided it was time for the pyro shroom to shine. He ordered it to use pyroblast. A fireball rushed towards the lightning snail, colliding with its electricity and causing a massive explosion. The lightning snail caught fire, but counterattacked, releasing lightning bolts that forced pyro shroom to use blazing dash to dodge. Our MC noticed the snail moved very slowly and recognized that this was a weakness he could exploit. Pyro shroom launched flames again, and on contact, another explosion erupted. The smoke and dust slowly settled, revealing a roasted lightning snail. Pyro shroom happily waved at Yun, our MC, who then told him to stop wasting time and check if if the enemy was completely dead. Piroshun gave an OK signal. Unexpectedly, its head flew off. The snail had emerged from its shell, still alive, and now stood on 2 legs. Jun attacked immediately. The snail mocked him, saying, "You can't hit me." It moved behind him, and their attacks clashed. The lightning snail commented, "He's slow as a snail." Jun realized that after shedding its shell, the creature moved as fast as lightning. He watched it sprint at an incredible speed. The snail admitted that without its shell, it was much lighter. It charged at him again. Our guy anticipated the attack at the last second and ducked, revealing the fireball prepared by Piroshun. The fireball shot directly toward the snail. At the last moment, the lightning snail dodged. More fireballs rained down on it, but it continued to taunt. "You can't hit me," Jun simply observed. The lightning snail laughed, saying, "Even at the same level, you've completely failed." Jun calmly replied, "I haven't failed at all. I wasn't even aiming at the snail in the first place." Just then, rocks from the ceiling fell. The lightning snail finally understood his strategy, but was still confident it wouldn't hit him. Then Jun activated Orc Berserker and Orc Charge. The entire area became chaotic. The lightning snail realized that Jun was using the thick smoke as cover. It believed it could still dodge anything, but then Pyroshu appeared, and simultaneously, Jun lunged from behind. It hadn't expected them to stack one surprise attack after another. It was caught completely off guard. The impact was brutal. Its body crashed against the wall and disintegrated, leaving only blood. Jun placed his hand on it. A notification appeared, announcing that the electric snail had been destroyed, increasing his nutrient points and unlocking fungus soldier spores. He leveled up to 3 and could now cultivate 3 fungus soldiers. He also learned a new skill, etherization. Through it, fungus soldiers connected to his mycelium network could awaken, absorb nutrients, and increase their combat power. He planted a new fungus soldier, Bolt's Room. Its main stat was electric, a fast-moving unit that could convert absorbed nutrients into electrical energy and unleash electric discharges to attack enemies. He entered an ethereal state. Now his forces included a level 3 pocket and a level 2 Porojo. He was pleased. He ordered them to clean the area quickly. From this moment on, this place would be the home men's base camp. He then paused, wondering how Sifang was doing. It had been a while since she last gained experience, which could only mean one thing: she might have run into trouble. Meanwhile, Sifang had defeated numerous slimes until a monster appeared and asked her, "Are you the one shooting my subordinates for target practice?" This was the level 2 slime king. He commented that she seemed strangely familiar, as if I've seen her somewhere before. Before he could finish speaking, he was struck. Annoyed, he complained, "I wasn't finished speaking," and called her rude. He was surprised when another attack was about to hit. Several arrows struck him, but he claimed, "Poking holes in me is useless." He struck Sifang. The impact was strong. The slime king boasted that he wasn't like those subordinates. "My body is very malleable, and physical attacks will only make me lose a bit of liquid." He added that he only needed to keep absorbing moisture from the ground, making physical attacks completely useless. He then told Sifan to die. He was about to throw a powerful punch. Sifang didn't move. To his surprise, his arm exploded. He became confused, seeing his body crumbling apart. Then he saw mushrooms growing on his body. Many spread rapidly across his back. Even the groundwater beneath his feet was dried up by the fungi. He wondered, when did the fungus begin to parasitize my body? Then he realized that the parasitic spores might have been on the arrowheads from the start. Recognition hit him, and he remembered her as that pink-capped mushroom man. His body finally dissolved, dropping a horn. Siphon obtained the loot, the devoured minotaur horn. This unlocked a new ability, allowing Jun to use his own mycelium to create bowstrings and arrows, with mycelial string arrows capable of firing magic abilities. The minotaur horn was stored in the magic bag. She then absorbed nutrients from a slime cork, causing her experience points to increase significantly. The effects on her were also felt by Jun. A notification announced that Sifang had leveled up to 4. She unlocked mycelial bow, allowing her to create bowstrings and arrows using her own mycelium, and her mycelial string arrows could fire magic abilities. Another notice revealed that Jun had also leveled up to 4. He unlocked Strength Fungus, an ability that allows hostile fungi in the mycelium network to resonate, gather information about an area, and greatly improve coordination through the network. Sifang finally arrived at the graveyard and saw the fungi cleaning. She had come to help clean up after finishing her tasks elsewhere, but didn't expect the 2 newly planted fungus soldiers to have already cleared the area. She commented that it was fine, as the area wasn't that large anyway. She examined the minotaur horn and remarked, "The material is really good. It's much better than the broken axe from the previous treasure chest, even better than the level 1 orc player's axe." Still, she lamented that they didn't have a craftsman who could turn it into a weapon. She asked if they should go find one. He replied, "The newly learned ability was perfect for that. He suggested they search for nearby players or their remains with crafter skills. He extended his mycelial network, and scout fungi sprouted across the field. Through it, he sensed players fighting nearby. 3 monsters had cornered a man, telling him he had nowhere to run and that he should simply return with them to forge weapons. The man refused. He didn't want to go back and become a slave. He accused them of working his clanmates to death while forcing them to toil. The blue orc-like monster told him to die instead. The artisan died. Through the scout fungus, Yoon realized it was too late. She asked what was happening and why she couldn't see anything. He explained that she would be able to once she extended her mycelium and connected to the network. She followed his instruction, and soon she could see too. Since things had come to this, if she couldn't save the living, she could at least save the dead. She reasoned that death was just living in a different way. She began releasing spores through the mycelial network. While they were busy, Pyroshroom and Boltshroom were fighting over a bag of trash. But in an instant, Pyroshroom vanished. A bright red light shone intensely where the artisan's corpse lay, revealing a level 4 dwarf artisan Pyroshroom. Its main stat was strength, and its fire affinity granted it strong fire resistance. As a dwarven mushroom, it possessed traditional crafting skills, along with increased resistance to toxins and physical attacks. Naturally, it had an artisan ability, specializing in forging and creation, and with the blessing of its fire attribute, its forging efficiency was even greater. It also possessed the special ability, Mycelial Cannon, which released a controllable, mycelium-connected chain of fire. This flame chain could connect to the network to share vision, while absorbing stored nutrients to increase its damage. When he regained consciousness, Firehammer was confused. Through a small mushroom, Yoon spoke to him, telling him she had resurrected him and turned him into one of her mushroom soldiers. From that moment, she called him Firehammer. Firehammer tried to protest, but Yoon cut him off, saying she understood and explaining that her scout fungi had already been tracking those trolls. One of the trolls told their boss that if all the dwarven slaves died of exhaustion, they wouldn't be forced to work anymore. The boss replied that he was an idiot. The level 3 sub-boss troll player explained that if their current slaves died of exhaustion, they would simply enter the dungeon and capture more. He added that dwarves weren't completely extinct. There were always survivors hidden in the dungeon. Then, he suddenly noticed something was wrong. He demanded to know why there were mushroom men there if their nest was right next door. One of them guessed it was probably a wandering elite monster and said he had no idea how it ended up there. Another declared it was their lucky day, excited to find an unexpected harvest, and threw his spear. The mushroom man stood his ground, then revealed a large hammer and hurled it back. They saw it coming. A loud explosion followed when the hammer struck the ground. The troll was nearly hit but dodged it at the last second. To his surprise, the hammer began to levitate and struck him before he could react. They were shocked to learn the hammer could auto-target enemies. He couldn't understand how a level 3 elite monster could possess such high-level equipment. The hammer flew again. A troll blocked it with his sword, managing to knock it aside. It flew upward and lodged itself onto the tip of a spike. Firehammer used it as a lever and, via a flaming rope, swung himself onto it while running at great speed. He then leaped towards the troll. A troll was about to throw a spear, but its hand was immobilized by a mycelial entanglement, followed by a mycelial ignition, causing its hand to explode. Firehammer targeted the next one, jumping onto its back and smashing its face into the ground. He saw another about to attack with a mace, but he punched it first, sending the troll crashing into the mountainside. Firehammer recalled his hammer to him. The troll was surprised when he smashed the wooden pillars above, causing a collapse. Even after taking a few hits, the troll remained confident, thinking it could still dodge the next attack. Firehammer unleashed Firehammer Ignition. The hammer was covered in flame. Then he activated the flying hammer's fire rain. The troll knew there was no way to dodge it. When it struck the ground, the flames triggered a chain of explosions. The system notified that the giant servant player had been eliminated. A notification announced that Artisan Firehammer had reached level 5 and unlocked a new skill called Scavenge, which allowed him to strike debris left by the hammer and recover any usable part. Another notice revealed that Yoon had reached level 5 and unlocked a new item, the Tin Foil Pack, a rare and durable work hoop that could be assigned to subordinates to assist with daily tasks like forging, gathering, and farming. In emergencies, it could also be used as a Jaeger. Ji Feng had also reached level 5 and unlocked a new ability, Instant Recoil, which allowed Ji Feng to teleport to an arrow he had fired via an arrow thread. Yoon told him he had done a great job. She sent him the coordinates and told them to go find him. Moments later, they met up, and Firehammer hesitantly asked. Yoon explained that a mushroom man's remodeled form was influenced by the race they were in life. If their boss was human, human, and Firehammer had been human before. He would now appear human. She added that Sifang had also been human before being converted into a mushroom man by the Archmaid, so her remodeled appearance was also human. By that logic, she concluded that Firehammer was more or less the same. He then changed the topic and asked if Firehammer could use the horn to forge weapons for them. Firehammer agreed that the horn was good material, but warned that they still needed other materials, and none seemed to be nearby. Yun replied that this was the Great Cemetery, so materials would arrive soon. He heard a noise above, and shortly after, weapons began to be thrown down the hole. They picked up a discarded magic iron bracelet. Firehammer used a salvation hammer to reshape it, then tossed it into the furnace. Apparently, this wasted equipment was now being converted into magic iron. In addition, a level 5 farm shroom helped him out. Firehammer used his forging hammer again and told the boss that the weapons were ready. He also used scrap materials to make him some pants and shoes. He closely examined the exquisite double-edged sword and realized it was much better than the crude orc axe from before. He noted it was a really good weapon, possessing low magic power. The user could infuse mana into it to cast spells from the blade. The material was quite common, so there was a risk of damage if high-intensity spells were used for too long. Sifang held an exquisite mycelium bow, which also had low magic power. The user could use their own mycelium as the bowstring and channel spells through it into the arrow. It fired very high-intensity enchanted arrows, though there was a risk of damaging the bow itself. Firehammer told him that he had sewn a magic bag into the lining of his robe, making it much easier to retrieve weapons now. Sifang asked where they were going next. He replied that they were going to traverse the ground. In the past few days, he had used the mycelium network to explore the area. The Great Cemetery was at the very bottom. If they went straight up the trash chute, each floor had a one-way barrier that only allowed downward movement. However, at the end of each floor, there was a passage leading to the next level. So, if they wanted to ascend, the best way was to fight through each floor. Besides, they couldn't just allow others to foolishly encroach on their territory. Sifang asked if they were bringing Firehammer, stating that having one more mushroom man meant more strength. She felt that Firehammer wasn't just good at forging, but was even more ruthless in a fight. Someone had to guard the place, and they couldn't clear other areas only to return and find their home gone. Still, through the shared mycelium network, Firehammer would gain experience when they killed monsters. Yun stepped on something and felt a force. A wall fell, separating him from Sifang. He wondered if it was a trap hidden within magic sigils. Now he understood why the probe mushroom couldn't detect it. He chuckled, saying that with the wall's thickness, he only needed one punch. He wrapped flame mycelium around his fist to create an explosive fire attribute attack. He struck it, but instead of breaking, he was sent flying backward. A magic circle appeared where he hit. He realized the trap wall was reinforced with a magic array. Trying to break through wouldn't work. He added that Elisa and Fen would have to take different paths since that was the case. Our MC turned around. The path ahead led to the Instant Realm's viscous corridor. After they separated, the terrain changed. He could see many eyes at the dark entrance. He observed carefully and realized it was a snail nest. A snail recognized him as the one who had killed its brother in the Great Cemetery. It told the others to catch him, so they attacked him with electricity. Yun planted his volt mushroom. The electric attack hit the ground. The snails thought they had hit him and finally got their revenge. To their surprise, one of them was cut in half. Then it happened again and again. Yun moved at an incredible speed, forcing the snails to switch to shellless mode to move faster. They were determined to show him the terror of the shellless tribe, but they felt the mycelium in a flash. Yun had trapped them all and activated mycelium detonation. He triggered a series of explosions and kept receiving notifications of experience gain. Moments later, he reached the door and entered. It should have been the boss room, but it was empty until he sensed something. A monster jumped onto his back. Fortunately, he escaped in time. He saw a snail shell, spun towards it, blocked it with his sword, but it kept spinning. The force launched him into the air. It was then that he used his mycelium. He clung to the shell and activated mycelium lightning channeling. An explosion followed, the area filled with smoke. The level 5 Snail King revealed itself. It was a tall bipedal snail with armor and a sword. Yun realized there was a second phase and found it interesting. Meanwhile, Sifang drew Yun in his mushroom form on the ground. She noticed that after being separated by the wall, there wasn't a single monster on her side, but she kept gaining experience from the shared enemies on the boss's side. Clearly, they were in the middle of a fierce boss fight, and she really wanted to go help. Returning to our MC, the Clash of Swords, Yun was relentless, still locked in combat with the Snail King. He parried an attack and counterattacked immediately, but the Snail King slipped away, then coiled into its shell, and from a narrow opening, fired fired jets of water. Yoon realized instantly it was water-type magic. He released his mycelium and anchored it to the wall to ascend. He didn't know what the liquid was, so he remained cautious, preferring to dodge first. The moment his mycelial attack hit, it slipped. He was momentarily paralyzed when his mycelium lost its grip, falling straight into the puddle just as the next attack landed. Fortunately, his reflexes kicked in, and he blocked it, but he was still pushed backward. The surface was incredibly slick. He couldn't even stand properly. He quickly realized that even the ceiling might be covered with the same fluid, which explained why his mycelium had failed earlier. The Snail King declared this was his territory, and Yoon stood no chance of winning. The next blow forced Yoon to drop his sword. The Snail King coiled into a ball again and moved in to crush him. Water erupted like a geyser from the impact. Seeing the mycelium, the Snail King asked if he was a mushroom man, then mocked him for daring to compete, calling him nothing more than something at the bottom of the food chain. Electricity surged through Yoon's hands as he plunged them into the water, and the resulting explosion blasted the Snail King away from him. The current rapidly propagated through the water, but the Snail King's aura instantly crushed it. Yoon hadn't expected that. The Snail King scoffed, saying that since Yoon had already used that move once, he wouldn't fall for it again. Yoon tried to attack again, using the water's conductivity, which the Snail King found amusing. He declared this was his territory, and as he could control the water's surface tension, he could also increase electrical resistance and weaken any electrical discharge. Yoon admitted he had some control over the water, but as the saying goes, dodging well isn't as good as being in the right place. That made the Snail King look down. There was mycelium in the water. He froze for a moment, wondering when the entire area beneath him had been covered. Then he realized he had already fallen straight into the trap. But the Snail King wasn't worried. He believed he could still control the water's resistance and weaken any electrical attack. Yoon didn't buy it. He activated Ignite. The Snail King remained arrogant until he saw the flame. Fire erupted instantly and consumed him entirely. When the flames died down, only a charred body remained. Before it completely turned to ashes, the Snail King managed to ask, "Why did you suddenly switch to fire?" He mumbled that Yoon wasn't fighting by the rule. The system window appeared, showing that he and his subordinates had leveled up to level 5. He was informed they could now generate mycelial wraps on the fly, allowing them to compress and store equipment within their bodies. He learned that his probe fungus could now function as a network download terminal. He was also told he could now cultivate explosive mushroom guard, a heavy unit capable of both melee and ranged combat. These could adhere to enemies or weapons using their own mycelium, then explode, inflicting massive damage and leaving magical effects. The exact damage depended on the attribute used during cultivation. When fire points were added, it triggered explosion that inflicted area damage and incinerated targets. The explosion's force scaled with the minion's attributes and could be manually activated by the boss. Aside from that, he received a notification that Sai Feng had comprehended the core skill, Spore Capsule. This required accumulating Spore Fury through normal attacks and abilities. Once maxed out, it could fire a powerful arrow that upon impact dispersed spore bombs over a wide area, causing massive explosions. He was also informed that Firehammer had comprehended the core skill, Reckless Smelting. This also required accumulating Spore Fury through combat. Once maxed, it could be released through the hammer, rapidly purifying and compacting materials while breaking down impurities. He was notified that the isolation ceiling wall had been lifted. He noticed an unknown human scent coming from beneath the pile of rock. He called Firehammer to check it out. Firehammer broke through the wall and reached it. Piles of black rocks lay there. Yoon asked if he knew what they were. Firehammer replied they were black rot stone, formed over time from compressed magical residues and humus. Yoon asked if they were valuable. Firehammer stated that trash plus trash still equals trash. No normal alchemist or blacksmith would bother with that kind of material. But that was before he became a mushroom man. Then he declared that now it was good material. The trace amounts of magical residue that were previously difficult to extract were now easy for him. He activated mycelial extraction, saying it was as simple as turning his hand. The extraction finished, revealing a magic silver stone fragment. He added that with this method, he could even extract epic-level mana fragment. Materials like these were extremely valuable to players. Yoon was surprised, then wondered if the piece was too small, as if they couldn't do anything useful with it. Firehammer pointed out there was still an entire pile left. He asked for some time, saying he could unearth more from below. Yoon agreed and left him to the cave. Firehammer began extracting the mana fragment. A moment later, he obtained several objects: a magic iron stone fragment and a magic aluminum stone fragment, a fragment of magical silver stone, a fragment of magical copper stone, and a fragment of magical gold stone. Suddenly, the ground trembled. Yoon told him to dig all all he wanted, but to make sure not to collapse the cave. Firehammer replied that it wasn't him. A giant worm monster with rows of sharp teeth was the cause. Then, we see a shroom charging forward, but it was lifted into the air. Yoon grabbed it, asking where it thought it was going when it wasn't its turn to kill yet. He told it to stay back and run errands for Firehammer. He told Sai Feng to go, and she agreed. She noted that the new shroom soldiers had been connected to the mycelial network, and she could summon them at any time. Meanwhile, the scout shroom sensed something. It reported that the enemy was about to break through the ceiling of the black rotstone cave. They couldn't let it enter, so Yoon ordered them to distract it and move the fight to the corridor. The scout shroom understood. It taunted the worm, causing it to make a loud noise and move in a different direction. Yoon asked Firehammer what kind of bug it was, noting that by the sound of it, it seemed to be charging directly towards them with a clear objective. Firehammer surmised it was a carrion black beetle. It had a natural frenzy for humus, which made it a strong rival in the same niche as the snail tribe. He added that it would make the fight easier once he finished his preparation. At the same time, Sai Feng attacked the carrion black beetle. Pushed back, she kept striking along its body until her fury was fully charged. She created distance between them. After all those cuts, it only left a superficial wound. She said it had a tough shell. It had even blunted the boss's blade. The scout shroom told her that the new equipment Firehammer made for her was ready. She could download it directly from the mycelial network. The download began, 6% loaded. In a short time, it reached 86% as the carrion black beetle moved toward her. Fortunately, the download finished, and she obtained the magical silver arrow. She gathered energy around her, aimed at the black beetle's mouth, and unleashed a fully charged shatter-edge roar arrow. She fired it. She was then forced to leap back as the carrion black beetle charged at her, maintaining her distance. The arrow became lodged in the black beetle's mouth, and fungi began to grow inside it. The fungus started to glow. The carrion black beetle lurched towards her, and its body began to explode from the inside out, leaving only ashes. But the scout shroom warned her not to relax yet, stating that more were coming, as distant waves had already detected another black beetle heading their way. However, she was already breathing heavily. Yoon asked through the scout shroom if her stamina was depleting, and told her to quickly convert the monster corpses into humus to restore HP. He also suggested that, in the meantime, she should use the freshly cultivated shroom soldiers to hold it back. A shroom was summoned. It was a level 6 boom shroom guard. She saw that only 2 appeared. Yoon explained that the maximum squad size was 6, and it was already full. She explained that, excluding the transplanted Vault Shroom and Firehammer, the active roster included Boss Firehammer, herself, a worker shroom, and 2 boom shrooms, making exactly 6. Counting the scout shroom would exceed the limit. The scout shroom replied that it didn't occupy a slot, as it was part of the mycelial network. It was like an off-roster unit. The black bug then appeared. The scout shroom observed the creature and noticed that, since it kept its mouth tightly shut, it might be afraid of getting its mouth blown up again. A boom shroom empowered its firearm and hurled it at the black bug, causing an explosion. The black bug was clearly injured. The other boom shroom attacked with a sword, striking the top of the black bug and pushing it. They watched it fall. Sai Feng wondered if the new shroom soldier was a strength type, as it had sent the massive black bug flying with a single blow. The boom shrooms regrouped. One of them approached the black bug to retrieve its spear, while the other charged at it and hurled a self-destructing flying sword into its mouth. The top part of the black bug exploded. The system window appeared, showing that our MC's experience points had increased and that the Shroom Man tribe had reached level 7. He learned that he had unlocked the Lone Sovereign boss's exclusive skill. For every subordinate missing from his side, either fallen or not deployed nearby, all of his stats would increase by 10%, up to a maximum of 100%. Scout Shrooms no longer needed to vibrate their caps to fly. Now, they could levitate freely. He could now cultivate a new Shroom soldier, the Archer Shroom. This ranged unit fights with a short blade in close combat and can fire split arrows with different attributes. It can also deploy a spore umbrella from its cap for short glides. When deployed alongside Sai Feng, it gains a troop inspiration effect, all stats plus 10%. Aside from that, he could also cultivate another new Shroom soldier, the Digger Shroom. This worker Shroom, having absorbed the carrion black beetle's digging ability, could bore through mountains and excavate tunnels to reshape caves. When deployed alongside Firehammer, it gains a captain's inspiration effect, work efficiency plus 10%. Sai Feng was impressed by the combat power and teamwork displayed by the new Shroom soldiers. Through a scout Shroom, Yoon was... Someone asked how the soulless mushroom soldiers could move and fight with such fluid coordination on their own. Fen then asked what they meant. Jun explained that the boss was controlling them through the mycelial network. Deep in the cave, a bright pink energy spread across the ground. Poon sat on his stone throne, directing the fungal soldiers through the network. He found the entire experience surprisingly entertaining, almost like playing a game. A magical projection of Yun then appeared before Sai Feng, ordering her to clear the battlefield and deliver anything useful to Firehammer so that new equipment could be forged. As she stood among the remains of her enemies, the pink energy began to spread across the corpses. The remnants dissolved into liquid before disappearing completely. A system notification confirmed that a scavenger black insect corpse had been decomposed and absorbed. It stated she acquired limited lifespan black skin, which granted a hardened, insect-like epidermis. The system also explained its limitation. If physical damage exceeded 50% of the user's total health, the skin would shatter and begin to reconstruct, becoming temporarily unavailable until the process was complete. Sai Feng then picked up several glowing blue teeth. She noted that the teeth were incredibly durable, having remained intact even after multiple explosions. She added that taking them back to Firehammer for weapon crafting would be a great idea. As she prepared to leave, a powerful gust of wind suddenly swept through the cavern. The air converged on a single point and carved a deep hole into the rocky ground. A massive vortex formed, drilling deeper and deeper into the earth. Far below, a hooded figure watched from the shadows. The system identified him as the low-level administrator, Death Reaper number 10. It struck him as strange that all the monsters on the lowest floor had suddenly become unresponsive. It particularly bothered him that the two black insects he had sent, whose levels far exceeded anything on the lowest floor, had been completely annihilated. For a moment, he considered going there personally, but quickly abandoned the idea. The pay simply wasn't worth risking his life. Then, he noticed that there was still plenty of expendable cannon fodder available. He turned to a group of bacterial monsters and asked if any of them wanted to become players. The bacteria were shocked. They wondered if they could truly become players too, having always assumed they would spend their entire lives slowly rotting within the dungeon. The Reaper reminded them that their stats had been granted by him. He activated purple magic through the book in his hand. The system announced that player privileges had been unlocked for the bacteria. They could now move freely, open treasure chests, and fight monsters. After finishing his work, the Reaper guided them toward the newly created hole. He ordered the horde to charge into the depth below, promising them that if they solved the problem, they would be rewarded with ownership of the entire lowest floor, along with all the black rot stones they could ever desire. He declared that the future of their race depended on this mission. The army of bacteria immediately surged forward. One bacterium asked the boss, "Where exactly is the insect? We haven't seen any sign of it." The other bacteria remained silent. Soon, several of them spotted a giant treasure chest. One bacterium became euphoric and rushed toward it. After spending so much time rotting in the dungeon, it could finally open a treasure chest. Even better, it wouldn't have to share the spoils with any of the other bacteria. The bacterium reached the chest and forced it open. It peered carefully inside. Suddenly, a hand shot out from within the chest. The hand grabbed the bacterium and dragged it inside. The lid slammed shut. Pink energy wrapped around the bacterium. Then, without warning, something abducted it. Another bacterium looked back and realized its companion had vanished. The captured bacterium was dragged across the rocky ground, deeper into the cave. It tried to scream, but its mouth was sealed shut. Moments later, it disappeared completely. Soon, another bacterium noticed something strange. It realized there should have been more of them. The group had entered the cave together. It asked its companions where the missing bacteria had gone. One bacterium simply shrugged. Suddenly, an arrow sliced through the air and killed one of them. The remaining bacteria were shocked. One of them demanded to know, "Who attacked us?" It looked up and spotted the culprit. The attacker was Milan, a level 7 archer mushroom. Thanks to her captain's inspiration effect, all her stats had increased by 10%. She apologized timidly for attacking them. Sai Feng immediately reprimanded her for apologizing to the enemy. Milan panicked and then apologized to Sai Feng too. Sai Feng couldn't help but think how fierce the black insect had been. Yet the archer mushroom created from its corpse had somehow inherited a timid personality. Milan apologized once more as she drew her bow, then fired another arrow. Crackling energy surrounded the projectile. The arrow struck a bacterium. "If I don't demonstrate my strength," the bacterium declared defiantly, "she might think I'm weak." This bacterium then activated Split Arrow. The attack scattered across the battlefield and struck multiple bacteria. The victims looked on in confusion, then collapsed one after another. Even the bacterium that had launched the attack was stunned by the result. The elite bacterium proudly declared that its race had survived for millions of years. There was no way they could be annihilated by simple physical attacks, especially while she was in command. Milan calmly calmly pointed out that high temperatures were required to properly eliminate the bacteria. She gathered fiery energy into her bow. A flaming arrow soared across the battlefield, striking another bacterium directly. The projectile exploded on impact, engulfing the target in flame. Milan immediately celebrated her first victory. Saifeng reprimanded her again, reminding her to confirm the kill before celebrating. Milan timidly agreed. Then, both suddenly sensed something. Milan was the target. A powerful attack slammed into the rocky terrain where she had just been. The king of bacteria greatly enjoyed the privilege of becoming a player. The system identified him as the level 8 king of bacteria. He was thrilled to finally leave his territory, move freely, and overcome the limits that had restricted him for so long. Saifeng leaped from the cliff to evade his attack. She told Milan that the monster was too dangerous to face directly, ordering her to retreat further and focus completely on ranged support. Milan agreed, apologizing for causing trouble. The king of bacteria suddenly sprang from the cliff. The ground shattered under his tremendous weight. Saifeng immediately raised her bow and fired several arrows. The king of bacteria casually deflected every single shot. Then, a flaming arrow shot towards him, but the king of bacteria parried it too. The arrow exploded behind him. He mocked them for being weak. Milan was disappointed that even her explosive arrow had been blocked. Saifeng calmly declared that making him turn his head was all she needed. She immediately fired 3 more arrows. The king of bacteria burst out laughing, asking if his pressure had scared them so much that they couldn't even aim properly anymore. The 3 arrows had apparently missed. Then, he suddenly froze. When he looked behind him, he discovered that the arrow shafts were connected by strands of mycelium. The arrows had embedded themselves into the surrounding walls, forming a trap around him. His body was immobilized. The king of bacteria scoffed, claiming that a few strands of mycelium could be broken with minimal effort. He flexed his strength and tried to break the bond. Instead, a surge of energy coursed through the mycelium, electrocuting him throughout his entire body. Saifeng watched him carefully. The king of bacteria was left smoking from the attack. Saifeng immediately ordered the shroomword to sever the bacteria's head. The shroomword charged without hesitation. Suddenly, a swift cut flashed through the air. Saifeng and Milan were stunned. The sword strike never reached the king of bacteria. Instead, the shroomword suddenly froze in place just before delivering the final blow. Saifeng couldn't understand what had happened. She wondered why the shroomword had stopped moving and why it refused to wield its sword. The king of bacteria let out a smug laugh. He revealed that when they had pushed him to his limit, he had begun to infect the mycelium strands holding him. During that process, he discovered that everything in the area was connected through the same network. Because of that connection, the shroomword had already been infected before it could complete its attack. As a result, the guard no longer obeyed any orders. The king of bacteria scoffed at their reliance on the mycelial network and declared that everyone would be infected together. Spores rapidly spread throughout the entire cave. A rain of infection descended as the king of bacteria laughed triumphantly. Jun immediately ordered all shrooms connected to the network to disconnect and remain disconnected. He promised he would arrive shortly. Saifeng immediately followed the order and disconnected from the network. Milan also disconnected. Saifeng looked at her hand, wondering if she was still infected despite cutting the connection. A severe bacterial infection warning suddenly appeared before her. She collapsed, coughing up blood. Milan became completely paralyzed and fell to the ground. The king of bacteria laughed at their condition. Now that they could no longer move, they were completely defenseless. He explained that disconnecting from the network was useless because his bacteria could spread through the air itself. According to him, the battle was already over. Just as he approached the 2 defenseless shrooms, Jun arrived. Without hesitation, he kicked the king of bacteria. The impact was so powerful that the king of bacteria was sent flying directly into the ceiling. Saifeng immediately apologized to Jun for being infected. Jun didn't blame her. Instead, he admitted the mistake was his. He had failed to gather enough information about the enemy beforehand. He ordered her to take the others and retreat while he handled the battle personally. The king of bacteria's head remained embedded in the ceiling. He freed himself, then demanded to know if Jun was the boss of that place. The king of bacteria immediately lunged downward with a vicious attack. Jun blocked the attack using his axe, continuing to parry every incoming blow. A system notification appeared. A subordinate had left the battlefield. As a result, all of Jun's attributes increased by 10%. Jun counterattacked with a fully charged strike. Their weapons clashed again and again. Saifeng watched the battle closely. Suddenly, the king of bacteria laughed as he blocked another axe blow. A second notification appeared. As 2 subordinates had left the battlefield, all of Jun's attributes had increased by 20%. Jun suddenly raised his free arm. The move took the king of bacteria completely by surprise. Then, Jun unleashed a devastating devastating punch, directly into the bacterium's face. The full force of the blow connected, sending the Bacterium King flying backward. The ground shattered upon impact. The Bacterium King couldn't understand what was happening. Each punch from June felt heavier than the last. Before he could recover, June suddenly leaped toward him. This sudden charge took the Bacterium King completely by surprise, and June then unleashed a relentless barrage of attack. June continued pummeling the Bacterium King without mercy, knowing it was better not to stop attacking a monster before the system confirmed its death. Suddenly, something felt wrong. June coughed up blood and fell to his knees. The Bacterium King laughed, mocking him and saying they never seemed to learn. He explained that intense close-quarters combat only accelerated the infection process. He commented that June had truly unleashed himself and had nearly hacked him to death. Then, he revealed that his parasitic bacteria had already spread throughout the flora covering June's body. The Bacterium King activated his parasitic bacteria healing ability and began regenerating his wound. He declared that his counterattack was about to begin. June was taken by surprise. The Bacterium King kicked him hard, sending him flying. June slid across the ground, plunging his axe into the earth to slow himself down. The bacterium fixed its gaze on him and suddenly disappeared. June immediately felt an attack coming from his blind spot. The Bacterium King unleashed Tetanus Blade. The blow landed directly on June, leaving a deep cut on his body. The bacterium pressed the attack, unleashing Golden Bacillus Blade, then followed up with Bacillus Blade, cutting June mercilessly. This relentless combo slammed June against a wall. The Bacterium King lunged to finish the battle with a final strike, pinning June against the wall. Then, he mocked him, asking if he still planned to resist, instead of accepting a quick death. Otherwise, he would slowly torture him alive with his bacteria. June asked what bacteria he was talking about. To the monster's surprise, the bacterial growths covering June's body suddenly disappeared, receding. The Bacterium King couldn't understand what had just happened. A system notification appeared. Due to all of June's subordinates having evacuated the battlefield, all of his stats have increased by 60%. It also displayed Sifang's shared ability, Hardened Black Skin, Limited, which created a toughened epidermis that shattered and reconstructed whenever physical damage exceeded 50% of maximum health. While reconstructing, the ability remained unavailable. June raised his arm and blocked the next attack, then unleashed a powerful slash, revealing that he had brought antibiotic. The Bacterium King was stunned. June threw his axe, piercing the Bacterium King's shoulders. Then he threw his mycelium, dragging the Bacterium King directly toward him. The Bacterium King's body couldn't resist the pull. A day earlier, in the Great Cemetery, Jun had learned about antibiotic. Firehammer explained that black rot stones contained tiny traces of antibiotics that had been used to combat bacteria. These were remnants of alchemy bottles discarded by high-level players, and over time, the residue had seeped into the stones. Jun commented that while others threw those things away, he collected them. What was useless to others was invaluable to him. He ordered Firehammer to gather more for future use. Firehammer immediately agreed. Back to the present, Jun infused his attack with antibiotic. He unleashed an antibiotic attack. The strike sent the Bacterium King reeling backward. The impact shattered the cave walls, sending a massive shockwave through the area. Fragments of debris shot out with the force, and a huge crater formed beneath the bacterium. The Bacterium King lost his limbs, and an enormous hole ran through his torso. Struggling to his feet, the Bacterium King declared that physical attacks were useless. His bacteria could regenerate endlessly, but when he looked at his hand, it didn't regenerate. Horrified, he discovered that his bacterial reproduction ability had been completely suppressed. Suddenly, bubbles began to form all over his body. A moment later, he exploded from the inside out. A system notification confirmed the elimination of the Bacterium King. Jun and all his subordinates advanced to level 8. The group successfully learned the racial ability Bacterial Resistance, increasing the Mushroom Men race's resistance against bacteria by 30%. They also unlocked the Lure Fungus ability, allowing them to rapidly grow harmless fungal clones from spores to attract enemies. Additionally, Orc Fury evolved into Mushroom Man Fury, granting a temporary 30% boost in combat power by forcing mycelium through their veins. Finally, the system announced that the subordinate archers had learned net arrows, allowing them to shoot mycelium nets capable of capturing and restricting targets. After that fight, a mushroom field was being cultivated. Sifang commented that the mushrooms were growing wonderfully. Jun explained that after extracting the useful materials, the decaying residue left by the black rot stones was perfect for cultivating mushrooms. Firehammer happily announced that it was time to eat. At that very instant, the system notified everyone that Ethereum's status had been deactivated. Gathered around a table, Jun said that everyone had expended a lot of energy energy during the battle, so he was inviting them to a staff meal to help them recover. Milan asked what a staff meal was. June realized that the term came from his original world, so it was natural she didn't understand it. He explained it was a free meal provided by a workplace. Firehammer confidently declared that since the mushrooms were staff, a meal made of mushrooms was naturally a staff meal. Milan immediately accepted the explanation. June found the logic strangely refreshing, while Saifeng nearly burst out laughing and had to cough to compose herself. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the blinder sat alone in silence, waiting by the crater. He noticed the bacterial monsters had failed, realizing it was time to find a new batch of cannon fodder. Suddenly, the ground began to tremble. The sensation reminded him of the scavenger black beetles, though he clearly remembered all of them had been annihilated. A crimson light burst into the cave, then a massive monster emerged from beneath the earth. A system notification identified the creature as the Earth Star Digger, motivated by the corpse of a scavenger black beetle. It was described as a gigantic engineering fungus, capable of crushing mountain rock and absorbing useful substances from debris. Though highly effective against heavily armored units in combat, it required careful planning due to its demanding planting conditions and long cultivation period. Administrator Grim Reaper was stunned. The creature before him was not one of his black beetle. Our protagonist stood atop the Earth Star Digger, demanding to know if the blinder was responsible for sending players into his territory. The blinder immediately realized that Yoon was the bug he had been searching for. Gathering his energy, he declared the moment perfect and decided to eliminate the bug personally. He unleashed an ability called Admin Light Beam, Wrathful Account Deletion. A purple energy beam surged forth. The Earth Star Digger's petals began to spin as it charged directly into the attack. The blinder was surprised he was being suppressed. Then, a massive explosion erupted as the Earth Star crashed into him, but he managed to recoil and withstand the impact. The blinder was astonished by how much the player had grown in just a few days. Realizing he could no longer handle the situation alone, he decided he needed to request higher authority from his superiors. But before he could do anything, Yoon snatched the Book of Privileges from his hands. The blinder gawked. He lunged forward desperately, demanding it back, but Yoon's fist struck his face, sending him sprawling to the ground in a single blow. The blinder groaned in pain. Yoon noticed how important the book seemed to be and wondered what kind of book it was. The blinder refused to say anything unless Yoon promised to spare his life. Yoon pointed out that everything was already written inside the book anyway, so there was no reason for him to explain. Sweat ran down the blinder's face. He spun around, attempting desperately to escape. He reasoned that losing the Book of Privileges didn't matter as long as he survived. He vowed that he would one day return with a massive army and annihilate Yoon's entire clan. What he didn't realize was that Yoon had already located him. As he ran, a powerful attack suddenly slammed him to the ground. The blinder thought he had been ambushed. Milan revealed herself, activating Ignite and unleashing a massive blast of scorching energy. The roaring flames traveled through the mycelium, attached to the arrow embedded in the blinder's body. Terrified, the blinder begged for mercy and offered to negotiate. The flames exploded, engulfing him entirely. Milan slowly descended from above, using her slow descent ability. She realized the blinder had been attempting to negotiate. She apologized for attacking too quickly. Yoon replied that it didn't matter whether a low-level administrator had anything to say or not. He was far more interested in the Book of Privileges they had obtained. Saifeng asked if the book had any practical use. Yoon explained that it allowed them to monitor the movement trajectories of monsters and players within a limited area. It could also eliminate players who broke dungeon rules. Most importantly, it had the authority to grant certain NPCs player status. Yoon noted that once an NPC gained player status, they could leave their restricted zones, open treasure chests, and freely extract minerals. Saifeng suddenly realized that they could have left their original territory long ago and continued expanding upward. She wondered if they were already considered players. Yoon corrected her. According to the book, they were classified as bugs. Saifeng immediately understood. As long as the bug wasn't resolved, other administrators would continue sending players to eliminate them. Suddenly, an incoming administrator communication request appeared on the book. Saifeng feared that answering it could expose them. Yoon told her there was nothing to fear and ordered her to answer. The face of an administrator appeared on the screen immediately, looking annoyed. The administrator, seeing he was speaking to another administrator, demanded to know why he had taken so long to respond. Yoon, disguised as an administrator through his mycelium, nervously explained he had been delayed while dealing with the reported bug. The administrator scolded him, saying that taking so long to fix a simple bug was exactly why he deserved to stay at the bottom forever. He then reminded him to mark the bug status as resolved later. Yoon chuckled awkwardly and acknowledged the order before asking asking if there were additional instruction. The administrator noted that his sudden enthusiasm was unusual, as he typically avoided work whenever possible. He then mentioned a data anomaly on the 3rd level from the bottom and ordered him to investigate it. Once that was resolved, the call ended. Siphon was astonished that Yoon's mycelium disguise had successfully fooled the administrator. He then asked if they planned to head to the 3rd level from below. Yoon replied there was no need to rush since they were being treated as cannon fodder anyway. He decided to first expand the mycelium network and explore the surrounding area. Suddenly, Siphon noticed Milan was nowhere in sight. Yoon couldn't even sense her through the mycelium network. He quickly realized she was disconnected. Immediately, he contacted Provence's room, demanding to know her whereabouts and if they had seen Milan. The Z-probe replied, confirming it was at the end of the 1st level, and urgently told Yoon to come at once to see what it had discovered. Yoon swiftly arrived at the cave entrance, where Milan had vanished. The Z-probe confirmed it had tracked Milan's spores to this point before the trail vanished. Suddenly, whenever he tried to extend the mycelium network past this point, the connection would sever. Yoon meticulously inspected the area, noticing that the massive tree root had been gnawed on. Realizing that whatever lived here fed on wood, he started to grow suspicious. He stared intently at the massive tree root, which was covered in gnaw marks.